Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is Nate Whitson. Glad that you're here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Hit that bell, hit that icon, whatever it is, whatever platform you're listening to, so that you don't miss the upcoming shows. We appreciate that, and it actually helps us to get in front of more guys and get this message out to more Christian men who are looking to be better husbands, better fathers, just better men in general, better followers of Jesus, all of that kind of stuff. So anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. If you feel like these conversations are worthwhile for other men, that means a lot. So today, I want to talk about something that I really don't want to talk about. This is like one of the many times where I feel like it's a conversation that I need to grow in before I should ever say anything about it. Maybe you understand what that's like, when you're talking to your kids or to, a friend or somebody else, right? Like when you're in a position like this where you've got a microphone and you're sharing stories, it's often very, convicting. It's very hard sometimes to have a conversation like this because you know your own wrestling and dealing with those. And I hope that always comes out of the podcast that I share, not a perfect man, but somebody who's pursuing the perfect one and trying hard to be a man that is like him, that is more like Jesus all the time. And so, again, this is a conversation today that I think is worthwhile for me. And I speak on this conversation today, hoping that I myself will put into practice some of the things that I'm just going to share with you over the next few minutes. But today's conversation is how to have hard conversations with others. How do you do that? And how do you do it well? How do you have a hard conversation and not put it off, not avoid it, right? So I don't know about you, but it seems to me like this is a worthwhile conversation. I hope so. And again, if it is, like it, comment on it, share it with somebody else, because my guess is for a lot of us men, this is one of these things that we just don't like to deal with. I don't like having to have hard conversations, and yet I find out that it's just a big part of life, right? My goal then in this podcast episode, like with all the rest, is to really bring super practical, helpful ideas to Christian men so that we can get better husbands, fathers, followers of Christ, better men in general, right? Like this is an area of growth that I personally know is one for me. So here's how I want to kind of open this, I guess. Imagine that, and this won't be hard to imagine at all, I'm sure, for many of you, but imagine that you're driving your car and your check engine light comes on, right? You've got a couple choices here with this. You can either pretend it didn't happen, put tape over it, right? And just ignore it. That's kind of like all wrapped into the one option. You can do all of that, or you can take it in and get it fixed, have it looked at, take care of it yourself. Easy analogy, right? But in thinking of this, it's so appropriate for what's happening here with these hard conversations. I think when we cover it up, when we ignore it, when we pretend it's not there, I think temporarily it does help to relieve some of the pressure that knowing we have to take on this hard conversation can have. It can help temporarily. But I think that what we all know is that ignoring it, putting tape over it, pretending like it's not real doesn't help at all, right? Hard conversations in our relationships are like that check engine light. And we can either avoid them or we can really look under the hood and see what's going on. Have you ever had a situation like that when it comes to having hard conversations? Has there ever been a moment for you where you've got to go take this thing on? You know that you've got to go deal with this and it's not going to be fun and you need to do it, but you avoid it. Has that ever been your story? I know it certainly has been mine. And what's sad about it What's maybe more difficult or harder about it is that down the road, that thing is still right there, right? Like you find out that, yeah, it's going to be hard to have a hard conversation, but ignoring it, putting tape over it, pretending like it doesn't exist, trying hard to not look at it just doesn't work. It never solves the problem. And we know that going into it. In this ministry, we focus hard on four basic principles, four things that we kind of just hammer over and over and over. They are being men of honor, being men of discipline, being men of strength, and being men of joy. And I mention that because it takes being a man of honor to have hard conversations. It takes a man who knows that it's a man of integrity and commitment that's going to go do that hard right thing. It takes a man of discipline to do the hard thing instead of the easy wrong thing that you know you're trying to avoid. You don't want to go get into that hard conversation. It takes a real man to do that. It takes a man of strength to say that I'm going to be strong relationally, and that means there's something in between us, and I've got to go deal with it. It takes a real man to do that. And so we focus on those four things continually because this is really the way of Christ. And so I want to just give us four things in this really short podcast. I want to give you just four things that if I'm talking to me or somebody's, I'm listening to the show versus telling or giving this conversation. And what would I want to hear? What do I need to know? How do I need to approach this? I think the four things that I thought of was this. Number one, I need to start with me. You need to start with you. It made me think of this verse here in Matthew 7, verse 3. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Right? So this idea for me really comes down to like gut check of myself. What are my motivations in this? What do I hope, the outcome of this will be? I think that for me, when I think of this, and I'll give you a situation here where I was thinking of one of these recently. When I start thinking about the outcome and the motivation in all of that, it really does help my heart rate to come down. It helps me to really focus on something different than just, I don't want to do this. This is going to be hard, right? And I'll give you an example. I had to have a conversation with my boss about money issues, and they're no fun. Love my boss. He's a good friend of mine. But we had to have one of these conversations about something that didn't go right. I thought there was money that probably should have come to me that didn't, different things like this, right? No fun at all. And so as I'm stewing on this, as I'm thinking about this situation, one of the first things that God did help me to do in this situation was just to start with me. And it was this idea of, rather than just letting the worry just eat me up, I just kind of thought, how do I hope this turns out at the end? What are the outcomes that I hope happen between me and this person who I really love and enjoy, and again, is my boss as well? And it just kind of dawned on me, that I want to make sure that we have a strong relationship after this. Number two, it really helped me to kind of see, like, this isn't as big of a deal as it maybe it feels like. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a big deal. It deals with money. It's always kind of tricky. But at the end of the day, I like what I do. I want to have a great working relationship. And some of these things may be out of his control as well. And so anyways, I just started wrestling through, like, well, how do I want this to turn out? And it really kind of helped me to calm myself down. And so for you, when you start with you, check your motives. Ask yourself, what is the outcome that I'm hoping for here in this conversation that needs to happen? And then examine yourself first. Are you in a position of humility? Are you in a position of love? Right? And then you just pray, like, God, help me to come into this conversation that way. And in fact, one of the things I wrote down here was just like, have you talked to God about this? Have you talked to God about you? God, what's happening inside of me that makes me feel this way? God, help reveal to me what's going on inside of me that keeps me from doing these hard right things, having these conversations. Why am I so nervous and afraid and scared of these things? And so all of this introspective work, to me, I think is the first most important thing that you can do when you know you have to have a hard conversation. Recognize that putting a Band-Aid over it's not going to work. recognize that God wants to develop character and strengthen you. And often that comes through difficult things like this, right? And so do the hard right thing, have the hard right conversation, but make sure that your approach to it is appropriate. Make sure that you have humility in love at the start of this. Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick break from the show to share with you 3 things that I think could help you to become more of the man that God meant for you to be: a better husband, a better father, and a better follower of Jesus Christ. 3 things, totally free, that I think can help you. Number 1 is our podcast. Hit the subscribe button, share them with a friend. That makes a big difference, not only in your life, but in somebody else that you care about as well. And it helps us to reach more men. Number 2, we do a free weekly newsletter that is short, it's concise, it deals with just one key question and then 3 simple action items each week that will help you to get in the fight in a really practical way. You can find that at getinthefight.club/newsletter. And then lastly, you can join our Fight Club community. This is a free private app for Christian men only, where you can talk to guys and get involved with guys' lives from all around the world who are just like you, trying to get in the fight to be better men for Christ. You get things like daily devos, weekly challenges, monthly gatherings, small groups, so much more. It's kind of like a Facebook group, but exclusively for Christian men, and it's totally awesome, and it's totally free. Getinthefight.club/join and check it out. Get more today. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, get our newsletter, get involved in our Fight Club. Totally free things to help you to get in the fight and win today. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. It makes me think of another thing that we concentrate on here. We call it a Fight Club prayer, and we go through these 4 principles that I just mentioned. And by the way, if you ever want a copy of this, happy to send it to you. Just email me and say, hey, will you send me a Fight Club prayer? And I'll send you something you can print off there like we do. Anyways, it's a prayer through this. God, make me a man of honor. Help me to be a man of discipline, strength, joy, all these things. And then we pray through 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14. Be alert. Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong. Do everything in love. Those 5 prompts are so life-changing. And I mention it here because it's one of these things that when I'm being more introspective of my own heart, and before I go have a hard conversation with somebody else, I have a hard conversation with me. It's this conversation of, am I doing this in love? Am I humble? Am I alert to whatever else the devil wants to do here to take this hard thing and make it worse, to take this thing that's blocking a relationship and, again, make it worse? What's happening here? What's going on in me? What's going on here? What do I really hope for? All of these things. But it gives me courage too. I read the scripture, and wherein it says, act like a man, be strong, do everything in love. There's a combining of strength and character, but also softness, right? To do everything in love is so critical. And again, I want to challenge you as you think of your own hard conversations. Can you have this conversation and do it in a way that is loving? For many of us, the hard conversation is, man, because I didn't stop to check my own motives and intentions, and I haven't talked to God about it, I haven't softened my own approach first, then I go into it like a bulldog and nothing turns out right. Has that been your experience by any chance, right? For many of us guys, that's kind of how we do it. And so this first step is so practical and so helpful. Start with you, with all these things. Pray through these things that God makes you a man of humility and love before you go and do that hard right thing. The second thing, I think, is just choosing, the appropriate time, choosing the right time in the right place. You've probably remember this one in Ecclesiastes 3:1. It says there's a time for everything, a season for every activity under the sun. There's a time for everything. Like in the moment, although we see that the scriptures teach us not to, go to bed angry, like settle it, let's deal with it. There are times, I think, that depending on the situation, especially if it's somebody, a conversation at home, that's totally right. But there's also times that maybe it's not the most appropriate time because you need time to calm down first. You need time to go through step number 1 and examine yourself and pray and think through it so that you can be, the kind of person that you need to be first, like we just talked about. But I think that there is a right time and a place. Sometimes it's just like, let's go deal with this now. Other times it's let's get right ourselves let's talk to God about this first. And it's making sure that we don't ambush people. Have you ever felt ambushed by a hard conversation? Did you feel like that was helpful? If so, or maybe you've been on the other side of it where you've been the one that ambushed somebody else, your wife, a coworker, whatever it might be. And you're just like, we're going to come deal with this. We're going to deal with it right now. That kind of thing. I don't know about you, but like when somebody comes at me in a fighting posture, then my response is typically to fight right back. You know what I'm saying? So versus somebody who comes humble, gracious, kind, loving, and yet still firm and strong, right? There's a difference there. So don't ambush people when you're the one controlling the timing of this and the place that you do this. Wait until you've gone through step number 1 first, and you've started with you, and you can come with humility and love, and then consider where this person is at too. Have they had time? Do they look like they're in a place of being able to be in a good mindset, right? Again, that might take a couple days depending on the situation for you. And it takes some wisdom here. So consider others as well as yourself in your own posture, and then look for the right time. But the thing is, you've got to make time. Again, many of us just kind of try to put the tape over this conversation, pretend like it's not there. We're just like, look, I feel better. I don't feel as worked up anymore. So let's just walk away. And that's not the right thing. That's not what men of integrity do. That's not what men of honor do. That's not what men of discipline or strength do. So choose a time, get it done. Don't let it drag on, but make sure that you're in the right position and make sure that they're in the right headspace as well. I think the third thing that I would say is this, and it goes kind of with everything we've already said, but it's just leading with love. Ephesians 4:15, I wrote this down, and said, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every way the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. Speaking the truth in love, growing, maturing, being like Jesus. This is really an amazing verse, Ephesians 4:15. Start with kindness. Speak the truth. Yes. Tell the truth about how you feel. Tell the truth about what's going on in your heart and mind. Be honest about how you feel, even though guys aren't good at that. Be honest about what is stirring inside of you. But when you do that, speak it in love. There's a great passage that we were reading through in our Fight Club Devos the other day. And this young man comes running up to Jesus, and he's telling him, good teacher, what must I do to be saved? And then Jesus tells him these things, and he's like, you got to, basically follow the rules. Love God, love your family, don't cheat, don't steal, all these things, right? And the guy's like, sweet, I've done all of that. And then it says that Jesus looks at him with like genuine affection or deep love, or, depending on your translation, the way it reads there. But Jesus, before he gives the real answer that he wants to say to this kid, he looks at him with love. And I just think this, like that, it's such a stopper when you read that passage. Jesus, in his deep love for him, has a hard conversation and says, look, there's something that's missing. There's something we need to talk about here. But it's how Jesus did it that was so impressive. Again, I tend to be, probably you might tend to be, more of the either I just ignore it and move on, or I'm like, I'm going to deal with this right now, right? Like there's no in between. There's no maturity there. There's no following the steps that I'm talking about here. There's no right place or right time. There's no right attitude or heart within me. And I'm not leading with love and humility at all. But man, Jesus focused on the issue. He didn't make it personal. This is what's happening. But man, I love you so much. This is what's going on. And it's like when you get approached by somebody like that who actually loves you and is there to have a hard conversation, but they care, what a difference that makes, right? Again, compare that to what many of us men do when we just kind of go in, and just make a mess of things. The fourth thing that I think goes with all of this is just learning to listen more than you speak when you're frustrated or angry. How about this verse, James 1:19? My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Listen to God before you go have this hard conversation. This is so critical. Listen more than you speak. and again, starting with God. Have you ever been frustrated, overwhelmed by this hard conversation that needs to come, so much so that you get out of routine and rhythm of your quiet time, your devotions, you listening to worship music, whatever it might be, right? Man, I would tell you, when you have a hard conversation coming up, listen to God first. Get into his word a lot. Speak to him, pray to him, talk with him, give space for him to speak to you. You know, maybe that's just like turning the radio off. I know that's like one of the things for me. If I got to drive to work, I've got about a half an hour one way, half an hour back. Many times when I got something just stuck in my head and I just need to talk to God there, I'll just turn the radio off, you know, finding space to be quiet. But then when you're talking with this other person, ask clarifying questions of them as well. Things like, hey, did I get this wrong? This is what's, I know we need to have this conversation about. This is what's happening. This hurt my feelings, or this is what I feel like is going on. I don't think it's the right thing, or maybe I'm missing something. Could you help me to fill in the gaps here? I want to understand, right? Like all of these questions, however you can frame these questions to gather more information and to clarify what's actually going on, or what's happening at least from their perspective. Again, I gave you the story of a hard conversation recently with my boss. If I just go in guns blazing, number one, that doesn't really work. It's not very helpful. It's not like the way of Christ, right? But also, I realized it in like taking time to investigate my own heart and mind and pray about this first, that there are limitations that he had. And so it really started to help me to go like, okay, this may be something completely out of his control, and I don't know until I listen. And so listen while you talk. Seek to understand. Figure out like what's happening from their side of the story, and seek to get their point of view. And to do that, again, you've got to come with a posture of listening. So practically speaking, here's where I think you're at. I want you to, number one, commit to having hard conversations and not ignoring them, right? This week, I want you, as you're listening to this, to just identify, is there a hard conversation that you have avoided that you know you need to have? And if so, I want you to kind of remember back to these things. What is it that you want to say? If you could say it the best way you could possibly say it and have the outcome that you would like to have as the outcome, what is that? And then, why does this matter so much? Why does this conversation need to happen? What's at stake if you don't? And how can you approach it with love? Those things. What do I want to say? What's the outcome that I hope for? Why does this matter? And how can I approach this with love? I think if you go into that, you're going to be well prepared to go do this hard thing. And guess what? Here's where real manhood is really needed. You need to have that conversation, set a specific time for it, make sure it's the right time, the right place, the best that you can do when you are, starting with you, investigating your own heart and mind, getting right with God yourself, right? Finding the appropriate time and place where you can then lead with love and listen more than you speak. If you can do that, and you will schedule a time, I'm promising you that one of the things that will happen is no matter where it goes, there will be relief. When you don't deal with the hard conversation and you put the cover over it, you put tape over it, or you pretend it doesn't exist, that thing doesn't go away. It's going to come back up. And many times when we just ignore it, it comes back and it's even worse the next time. So have that hard conversation, right? Avoiding it doesn't make it go away. It makes it worse. It sometimes makes the issue bigger, right? Have the hard conversation. Act like the man that God meant for you to be, because Christ is in you. Christ is enough, right? Turn to him in this. Turn to him for those hard conversations and watch him grow you into the man that he is intending for you to be. This is what it looks like this week to get in the fight. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.